We could do just do our show music real low, just so there's some Facebook catches up and YouTube.
How do you work this thing?
So we are on YouTube.
Yeah,
I didn't
we're
know
on.
that.
Oh wait, go. Well, wait. Kilroy's. Does that say Kilroy's?
That was the.
Go back.
See, that is, but there's no music.
Oh.
I promise there's no music.
Okay.
But in about 20 seconds, we'll introduce them.
Well, what about that?
No. That's just
That's not
me. That's
music?
just. That's not. I'm not. It doesn't sound as good.
There's not music.
No.
Okay.
There is, but
You
it
did
just
not
doesn't
see
sound
my apologies.
So what we're gonna do
where I sent you
good. Is we're
the
gonna do John.
February 6th on the schedule for doing all that stuff. So I may have thought I did it and didn't.
Oh, for today?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I need to get your digits because I'm
yeah.
going to take you up on working on messaging. And February 18th that evening, I want you to pop on our. It's at 1800 on our.
Alrighty.
Are we live?
Okay. Send me an email with
Ready?
details. Let's do
Well,
it.
I gotta make
Ladies
sure I
and
get your
gentlemen,
email.
it's Saturday morning. That means those two great guys full of information you don't want to miss. A veteran show for all veterans. Welcome Major Andrew White, retired, and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck Wright.
Hey.
Hoorah! And welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Conversation. Boy, we're going to have some fun today. We got some...
This is going to be the Super Bowl edition, but
Exactly.
I have to jump in. We have to fix something from last
I
week.
know, yeah, you do. You were on the hot
I
seat.
cannot believe we screwed this up. I will never hear the end of it. And come to find out that Tom Selleck is not only my wife's fantasy football player, whatever you would call that,
Hollywood crush.
but also Miss Kathy's fantasy football.
He's everybody.
He's every woman out there. How do I compete? We were talking about POTUSes. We were talking about the President of the United States, specifically presidents who had served.
Right.
We had mentioned that Teddy Roosevelt's picture prominently hangs behind the Commissioner of the New York Police Department, Tom Selleck, played by Tom Selleck. Behind his office is a prominent portrait of Teddy Roosevelt. But what we failed to mention is that Tom Selleck is also a veteran, spent several years in the National Guard. So there we go. Tom, hey, man, we're really sorry. We know you tune into the show. We know you're a fan. I can't believe we missed that. I take complete blame, and hopefully my wife will forgive me for that.
Are you out of the doghouse now?
Possibly, although I'm sure there's some other transgression.
Exactly. You know, just because he's out right now does not mean he will not re-enter before the show is over. So,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
I kind of live in that world myself where it's like, you know.
So, hey, we've got a really, really full show. I have been looking forward to this for some time. This will be the week that we talk about our book of the month, and you may be able to see the resilience booklet, and that's going to be very cool. We're going to be joined in the studio by Brian Fleming. You'll see him in just a second. But before we do that, we wanted to drop a couple of knowledge bombs.
We got some kind of
we
cool
got some
ones
very cool ones.
for this
Very,
week.
very cool ones.
So,
we were going to drop some.
Chuck Wright says you are forgiven, Chuck Wright.
Oh, there we go. There's our knowledge
for now,
bomb.
it's temporary. So let's go into our first knowledge bomb.
Oh, this
Chuck,
one is so
what-
cool.
Charles, which one we got over here first? What we
Which
got
one do you
besides
want?
Brian's book?
We're going to talk about the
I'm trying to
resilience
get it pulled
booklet
up.
here in
Just
just a
one
second.
We're going to talk about that, but you know
Okay.
what?
Charles is lost.
Charles, can you bring up G.I. Joe? Now, I know some of y'all are asking, what? Well,
If you know my
Really?
compatriot over here,
I don't have a
a
picture of
G.I. Joe.
you know, all right.
I've got your box there that's standing
got a box.
sitting in
That's
front of
good
you.
enough.
You can put that
There
in
we
front
go.
of you.
There we go.
We have that
You can
over
hold that
here.
in front of you and right in front of your face.
Exactly. For those of y'all who don't know, the first G.I. Joe action figure came out on February the 2nd, 1964. Now, granted, this action figure is not from 1964.
Not the original.
Not the original. But,
I would hope not. He's a M1 Abrams tank commander.
exactly. And as a tanker, when I saw this, I had to get this one. And it is, you know.
There is no truth to the rumor that is a life-size Major Andrew White doll.
Possibly. But, the cool thing about G.I. Joe was, Hasbro came out with it, the 12-inch doll. It was really, really cool. But there's been several prominent G.I. Joes made since then to commemorate some pretty awesome people.
Tell us.
You've got Patton has a G.I. Joe action figure named after him. One of the more iconic ones also is you've got Roy Benitez, who is a Medal of Honor recipient.
Yes,
Robert?
from here in Texas.
Yep.
For those who do not know the Roy Benitez story, the man's wallet reads BAMF, and you guys know what that means.
And let me tell you something about Roy. When you read his citation,
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, the guy literally died, 3 times?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
came back to, he was shot, stabbed, and blown up all in one mission and still lived. When they were zipping...
No, he didn't just live. He would then turn around
Yeah.
and kick some serious booty.
And when they were zipping up the body bag on the 3rd time, they didn't have the bag closed when he woke up and reached to strangle the corpsman that was, zipping up his bag because he wasn't ready to go yet. Let me tell you
there
right
is
now.
no truth to the rumor that poor medic, not Corman, but that poor medic was traumatized and needed psychological counseling for the rest of his life.
All I know is that, they really do not make him any better than him.
No, and a good old Texas boy, too.
Yep.
You got to love him. I remember the first time I read his citation in the state capitol. And for those who haven't been to our absolutely magnificent state capitol, it is a beautiful building. But when they realized they needed more room, instead of expanding out because they were in downtown Austin, they went down several layers. And those floors are actually quite beautiful. They had a Medal of Honor display. And I was drawn to, for whatever reason, to Master Sergeant Benitez's, and you read that citation and you're just, wow.
Yeah, they don't make him like
No.
him. In fact, I don't think they made him like him before him, and they certainly don't make him like him after him.
Nah, he's a pretty bad dude.
Yep. I believe,
So who else?
President George H.W. Bush.
Yes, indeed.
He had a G.I. Joe figure named after him, Colin Powell, and...
Oh, no, wait a minute. H. Bush was in the Navy, so do you still call him G.I. Joe?
It's more of the symbolism, because they did,
Excuse me, sorry about that, folks.
they did have something. Now, the one that we're still trying to figure out, which to me would make sense to have, but I have not found his actual likeness. I believe that's the correct terminology. And I would think they would have one, would be our good buddy Arlie. I'm not sure whether he had one or not.
He's referring to Arlie Ermy, for those who don't know. And if the name, you're kind of digging for the name, going, oh, wait a minute, that sort of sounds familiar. You might remember him best as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in the iconic Full Metal Jacket. What a great show.
I've been researching it. I have not found his likeness yet, so I'm not 100% sure. But to me...
And one of the reasons you might not have is because he had his own talking...
And that could be...
So I've got to tell this story.
Yeah,
I don't think I've
absolutely.
told this story yet. A lot of Marine office buildings and stuff are built, and the easiest thing to build with is concrete. And so my brother had an office, and I had gotten him an Arlie Ermy talking, what would you call it, figurine, G.I. Joe doll, whatever you want to call it. And the floors are all concrete, and the walls are concrete, so anything that goes on just absolutely echoes. And some poor kid, in the doll had a little bit of a problem in that when the battery started to go down, it would shout out slogans. And a lot of the little things that Arlie would say, or Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, were not suitable even for our show to put out. So some young Lance Corporal is taking care of something. There's virtually nobody in the building. And he's walking down, and all of a sudden he hears, "Ye maggot, drop and give me 20." In your iconic Arlie Ermy voice, and I don't do it well, but this kid just hits the deck, Starts doing push-ups about the time the first sergeant comes around the corner.
And yeah,
And he's just going, what in God's name are you doing, Lance Corporal? And about that time, you hear Arlie Yermy's voice go, what is your major malfunction, maggot? And the first sergeant goes ballistic until he looks into, at the time, Captain Wright's office, and he goes off again with another one of his saying, and the first sergeant just busted up. So first sergeant decides to get back at my brother, who is completely innocent, knows none of this that's going on. And they had an officers and senior NCO meeting and decided to spring the story. I understand my brother turned a couple shades of red. Sorry about that. And if you knew Arlie and you knew what a wonderful guy he was,
that is an understatement.
you would appreciate that story. So as we continue on,
Well, just
one more?
finish up with a little more on, when the action Joes are figured, they made one action figure of each branch of service, and the original name for the Marine G.I. Joe action figure
Chuck E. Cheese.
No, Rocky. And the original name for the Navy sailor was Skip. The Air Force guy was Ace.
There we go.
Just a little... And
little
the
trivia.
G.I. Joe was G.I. Joe.
Okay. I'm going to have to pull my partner in crime away from this. He absolutely loves G.I. Joe. There is no truth to the rumor that he has hundreds at his house.
None whatsoever.
Okay. So,
Thousands.
but as we continue to drop
Our
knowledge bombs,
we're going to go over
we're going to tell an incredible story.
Yeah,
This is an amazing story.
We've got two very incredible.
Yes.
Let's go with,
excuse me.
Let's go with
Yeah.
the Harlem Warfighter. Do you have that one up? All right. I'm going to talk to you about
there we go.
these guys, all right? These was a group. Now, you got to keep in mind the time in American history that we're at, where African Americans were still not considered, part of mainstream American society yet. They were.
That is correct.
And again, one of our darkest, not our darkest, but definitely a low in American history, for sure.
We could do better.
Yeah, that would be an understatement. The Harlem Hellfighters were the first African-American infantry unit to fight in World War I who spent more time in combat than any other American unit. Despite their courage and dedication, they returned home still to racism. They fought in more battles, more engagements than any other unit in World War I.
Okay, so let's take our listeners back a little
Yeah.
bit to 1917, 1918. America got into World War I very late in the war, but remember, these were in the days before television. Mm-hmm. Vietnam would be the first war that was truly broadcast almost in live time.
Yes.
It would be the Gulf Wars before we would actually do live time, but back then people got their news primarily through the newspaper. There were not a lot of pictures in the newspaper back then. That was very difficult technology to print. So Americans are reading about this incredible combat unit.
And had no idea that they were
black.
The entire unit was made up of African Americans.
Yep.
And these were hands down some of the fiercest, most, and not only that, but think about this for a moment. We were fighting a European enemy, predominantly white, Anglo-Saxon, so
Yeah, it's a little more than predominantly.
yeah, their experience with individuals of color was limited at best, during these times, especially in the parts of France and Germany that they were fighting.
Well, now the interesting thing is actually the French were probably one of the first.
I'm talking about the Germans.
But Germans, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the French. I'm talking about the
As we
Germans.
know through World War II.
The enemy that we fought
Yeah.
had probably limited engagements
Oh, yeah.
with,
Absolutely.
Individuals of color. And the fact that, if you were a German infantryman and you see an entire battalion, just think about the look and the thought that they were thinking, like, who are these guys? And these were some of the toughest, most aggressive men out. I mean, these were battle-hardened soldiers.
They were true heroes. They were heavily decorated not only by the Americans
And
but
they
by the
deserved
French. So, a Kilroy's conversation, shootout, and salute
To
the Harlem Hellfighters.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to 4 men
Yes.
and tell their story, so we can get back and we can talk about.
Yep. This is one story that we found during this week that really interesting. These were 4 chaplains that were all on board the USS Dorchester. All right. When this ship was struck, all 4 chaplains removed their life preservers, knowing full well that doing it meant certain deaths for them, and gave their life preservers to others wounded, whatnot, so they can survive. Let me tell you, I can't think of probably a more heroic type of action than what these 4 men did. And, you know, their names are up there. You had a Jewish rabbi, a Roman Catholic priest, a Dutch Reformed minister, and a Methodist minister. All 4 of these men sacrificed themselves so others may live. There was probably nothing more heroic in any military than to lay down your life for another. And that is really the true meaning of sacrifice.
I couldn't have said it any better.
You know, these are, and unfortunately, history somehow overlooks this great deed. And it happened, like I said, on February 3rd, 1943, World War II. These men are true American heroes.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. All right. As many of our listeners know, and we're going to drop some more knowledge bombs towards the end of the show when we talk about our VSO of the week. But we do every month a book of the month where we focus on, read, and then we have the author of the book in. It is my great, great pleasure to introduce a longtime friend who is the author of several books, and I am now proud owner of all of them. I have the entire collection in my small collection, autographed, of course.
First edition.
First edition, autographed to me. You gotta love it. But I want to introduce, and I'm going to introduce him. I'm going to start out with his website address. You will never forget it once I say it. It is blownupguy.com. My friend Brian Fleming. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey,
Brian,
how are you, my friend?
I am well.
Good.
Well, Brian, welcome back over here. Remember about 2 weeks ago we had him on here. A little bit of a tease on what we're going to be talking about. And for our listeners who missed the show and all that, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, just if you take a minute to kind of
retell your story. Yeah.
Of how you went from your service to what happened to where we are today. You know, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, everybody who comes back from war deals with struggles in some way. Sometimes it's the same issue as you and I. Sometimes it's different ones we don't understand. But everybody struggles, and everybody has different battles and demons they have to face. And I deployed to Afghanistan in 2006. I was a team leader in an infantry platoon with the 10th Mountain Division there in Afghanistan. And about a month after we arrived there, our first vehicle that ran over a bomb in the road, double stack of anti-tank mines we ran over, blew it up, set it on fire. I walked away from it, but I started having a lot of memory issues, short-term memory issues, headaches every day, signs of a TBI, traumatic brain injury. And then a few months later, I was the truck commander in the lead vehicle of about a 15-vehicle convoy in the front passenger seat. And a minivan pulled out in front of our vehicle. And my driver went around him, and we got up right next to him, passing him in the other lane. And from about me to you, or not much furtherward, I mean, literally, I could have reached out and probably almost touched his car. We got up next to him while passing him, and the whole thing exploded. It was being driven by a suicide bomber. And then I don't remember much. I don't remember an explosion at all. I woke up in a ditch on the side of the road, burned and bloody. My face was second-degree burn. My neck was second-degree burn, which is healed. My hands were both third-degree burns, which do have scarring from skin grafts. And spent 14 months at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. And
that's the USS Intrepid, correct?
Yeah, they were building that. I was one of the first guys to get treated there. They were building it while I was there. The Intrepid Center.
Right. we're going to do a quick sidebar, a little tangent. USS Intrepid.
Yeah.
That's not an aircraft carrier sitting in
No,
New
it
York
is not.
City Harbor.
We called it the Intrepid Center. I don't know what they call it officially, but I know what you're talking
okay.
about.
Yeah, we know what you're talking about. That's actually what they call the burn center down at San Antonio.
Very interesting.
And I have to say, just a little tangent, the Navy does have a sense of humor when it comes to naming different things. Do you know what they call the swim tank over in Great Lakes Basic Training Center?
No.
USS Indianapolis. I kid
That
you not.
is cold.
I kid you not.
That is absolutely cold.
Anyways, Brian, we...
Oh yeah. So I mean, what the thing is, with the writing books, the speaking, I never actually meant to do this. There was never a plan. I didn't know anyone really did it. It just didn't occur to me. But I met a Vietnam vet who came through and talked about me and 30 other guys who have been blown up, shot up, burned up, missing all kinds of things, and damaged and injured. And he had a phosphorus grenade blow up right next to his face in Vietnam. He went to he was going to throw it off his riverboat, and he got shot in the hand by a sniper aiming for his head, exploded the grenade, and he was actually at BAMC back in 1969, and he spent quite a bit of time there. Well, he came through speaking and just talking to us, and he and I became pretty good friends afterwards, and I can't take credit for any of this, but he mentored me. He basically said, I'll show you how to do something with this that you won't believe. And
So this all started when you were still down at BAMC.
yeah, that's where I met him. And
Wow.
he said, Brian, I'll never charge you a nickel. But you said, and trust me, he could have. He's extremely successful as a speaker. And his name's Dave Raver. He lives right over here in Fort Worth. And he's
Guest for the future?
yeah. And so I took him up on his offer as a severely wounded infantry guy who was on his way to getting medically put out of the Army. What do I have to lose? And okay, if this guy went from where I am to where he is now, surely he can show me something for moving forward in my path.
Right.
And it not only changed my life, it transformed my family tree. I mean, my kids have opportunities now because of the things I've been able to do and people I've been able to meet that never would have happened.
Right.
I mean the difference it has made in the world and through our family line, even just meeting one person and being open and willing to hearing what someone has to say and taking them up on some advice.
And if I might, backtrack just a little bit. Were you married at the time, or did you meet your wife afterwards?
No, my wife and I got married 3 months before I left for Afghanistan.
Oh man.
Yeah, and we just celebrated 15 years last month.
Oh, that is
Congratulations.
outstanding.
Congratulations.
Yeah. She found a good one. She found a good one, man. What can I... Good old Texas girl. Yeah. When it comes to your women, y'all make them good down here. I got me one.
Yeah, we tend to, or we import them when we find good ones somewhere else. We're not opposed to
Just another knowledge bomb, right?
just another knowledge bomb. We're not opposed to rustling women to bring them down here to Texas. My wife is from Washington State, and I wish, and we don't have the pictures we had the week before. If our listeners and viewers could see the pictures, so after 3 months of marriage, you deploy to Afghanistan, then you get blown up, then you take 14 months to heal, and he's kind of a good-looking guy now. All of you single girls, he is taken. Sorry, but if you saw those pictures,
Well, if you go to blownupguy.com, they're on the About page.
oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
They're graphic too.
Yeah, it's
Disclaimer: they're graphic.
I kind of looked at it and I was like, no, that was somebody else. There's no way you came out of that looking this good.
Well, I can't believe my face healed like it did. That's
Yeah,
the thing. Like
it's
it
amazing.
shouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all my friends who were injured in the same way, their faces didn't heal. Like if they walked in this room, you would look twice.
Yeah,
You know?
you would recognize, okay,
Yeah.
because the first time
And I don't know why that is. I just don't.
Yeah,
Just it's how it happened.
good genetics. Okay,
Good
so
doctors.
I didn't want to, but it is important that we talk about the people behind the scenes. And you were just talking about family, and I wanted to highlight that and highlight the fact in Brian's been a friend for a long time. It's the joy of Facebook. You can keep in touch with people and see what's going on in their life. without necessarily seeing them all the time. I mean, if it's not on Facebook, it didn't actually happen.
Exactly. It's not Facebook official.
But the point I'm driving at this is that one of the things that you do, and this is kind of a lead into the book, because the book is this is a little bit different than the other book that you wrote. His other book is Redeployed. You regularly talk on Facebook, and this is, sorry, I'm going off on a little tangent. My wife who's listening understands why I'm going here and where I'm going. Marriage is a partnership, and a partnership takes work. It doesn't just magically happen. So that's kind of a sidebar tangent, but that leads us directly into, tell us a little bit about what the Resilient booklet is about.
Yeah, the Resilience booklet, if you want more information, you just go to resiliencebooklet.com, or if you go to the website from last time, free letter R booklet.com, you can get a free digital copy. But the Resilience booklet is about how extreme survivors overcome massive challenges. And here's the story behind it. I realized that as I was going through BAMC and getting out of the military, I came back, I rebounded really quick, considering everything from this injury.
Right.
And there were other guys.
If you want to call 14 months at BAMC quick.
yeah. But there were other guys who also moved on productively in life, but there were also friends who did not. Yeah. And the first 4 or 5 years of speaking, people would ask me, hey, what was that one thing or that helped you get past this? Or I didn't know why I was able to move forward. I just did. And I realized that wasn't helping anybody.
Right.
Because what they're really asking is, do you have a piece of advice I can apply to the battle I'm facing so I can win my war? And I felt like I was doing a disservice because I didn't know. I mean, ask Michael Jordan, how are you so good at basketball? Like, just is. You know, he's done it, millions of times. He's taken little shots, I guess. But he can't probably explain it entirely. But if it's something you just do. Right. You're so close to it, sometimes it's hard to see. This booklet, I looked at my life. I looked at all my friends' lives who overcame extreme devastation, military and non-military. Mm-hmm. And also looked at history. Guys like Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi prison camps and lived a very productive and very successful and influential life afterwards. And what made the difference between these guys and ladies, and I was in this category, I just happened to be, and the people who never came back. Like, if there were 3 or 4 major foundational things, what were those things? Because now I can start kind of giving people some like you say, a knowledge bomb.
Right.
And this is the shortest book I wrote. It's only about 64 pages. I did that on purpose because we're living in an age where attention spans are this big. And
I was going to say that was one
beer
thing I
card.
noticed.
Yeah, well, I didn't want another 300-page book on resilience that nobody's actually going to end up reading or being helped by. So I made this so it can fit in the cargo pocket of your camis, whatever you call them in your service. And it's not something that it's not like, healing the wounded heart of a warrior or something not cheesy or soft. No guy's going to be like embarrassed to be seen with a book like this. And
so read this book doesn't require you to turn in your man card.
No, I got pictures in the back. No, so I
appreciate that.
So there's 3 foundational things in there about resilience, and then within each of those, there's a handful of nuggets that you can apply to your life. You can literally look at some of these things and go, oh, that would apply to my life here. And I actually didn't write this book like I wrote my other ones. Here's how this one happened. I was hired to go give a speech to 400 doctors and mental health professionals up at a university in Boston. So these are all the people who, we sit in their office and they want us to stare at the white wall and talk to them. Well, they hired me to come be the keynote speaker on resilience. And so I'm not sure what compelled them to do that, but of course I do. So I structured that talk. I wrote out the talk. There's a good way to do it. There's a lot of things you have in there. Well, I just recorded the talk, and then I sent that. I got the speech transcribed. I got it edited. I got it printed as a book. And so this book's a 1-hour keynote speech in booklet form, and it's something you can read in about 30 or 40 minutes.
I love that. Brian, one of the things that I remember from the last show that you talked about that, to me, I really like and I definitely want to expand on is, and you've even hinted onto it a little bit on this show already, is the book is not just about servicemen and women, how we overcome challenges, but it can be applied to anybody no matter what challenge you may face in your life, there are key aspects that are universal that can be used to overcome whatever that barrier may be.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the key things that makes you and this book successful, is that they're not just keys for the green suiters, they're keys for everyone for life.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, everybody gets hurt. And what this book addresses is the thought battles, the propaganda that goes through our minds, and how to win the battles you're facing. I mean, I have met women who grew up in abusive households and were abused as children, who dealt with post-traumatic stress in the same way I have or my friends have. And even though the root cause of that post-traumatic stress or whatever issue it was, even though the root was different, the cause was different, we all, on the other side, we all deal with the same finite number of issues. There's only so many issues we deal with as human beings. And that's what unites us. It's not what, people say, oh, you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. You weren't there. Okay, well, they deal with the same issue that you do. They can relate to you way better than you think you can if you stop being so judgmental on yourself. And so you're right. These are not military issues. These are human issues because we're all humans.
So if I hear you correctly, and I'm going to both of you please speak into the microphone. I can actually hear as I'm listening as your head turns.
Gotcha.
You move away from the volume. Anyway, but if I'm hearing you correctly, even though our issues may come from a different place, as you said, the root, symptoms are often pretty similar. But more importantly, the solutions, or at least the start to find some of the solutions, can be found in a book that you can read in 25 to 35 minutes.
Yeah, and understand too, this is based on my personal experience as well as my research on many other people. And so I'm not here saying, hey, regardless of what you've been through, this is gonna be your golden ticket out.
Yeah.
I can tell you my experience. I can tell you what worked for me. Yeah. I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, this is gonna be your end all. But you know what? I have had people tell me, this changed my direction. This was a linchpin in my life. This was something that turned the tide in a better direction. So, I mean, it depends on the individual. But if you can't get something out of this, I think you're unwilling to get help.
and Brian, I think you've just hit a very key point, and that is, I agree with you. You're 100% right. Not every aspect in this book is going to fix all of your problems. There's not one magic tool for everything, but can you read this and take something away to at least maybe start a healing process? I would say that answer is probably yes for a lot of books, not just yours, but in general. But you also have to you can't help the unwilling.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too, because you made a good point. I mean, people look at their friends or family who struggle, and they think, man, if I could just make it all better. Someone who's dealing with a huge problem, whatever that battle is, what they really only need is to take their next baby step. If they just take one baby step in the right direction and make a little bit of progress, that's enough in most people's minds to go, okay, I'm going to put the gun down and not put it in my mouth. All right. It's like if they can make the next small step in the right direction, I mean, that is very inspiring to us personally and go, okay, I made progress. Maybe I can take another step. It's like they tell people when they're trying to get off of an addiction. It's like, is it 1 day at a time? Is it 1 hour at a time? Well, for some people, it's 1 minute at a time. I won't do it this minute now. Maybe I'll do it in the next minute. Well, you get to the next minute. Okay, I'm not going to do it this minute. I'll do it the next minute. Okay, you get to the next minute. It's like you win that battle one baby step at a time, and that's how it is.
Exactly. And so many things that what you're talking about makes so much sense. The first thing is the willingness, and we both know. I mean, you and I, we run in a lot of the same circles. We have mutual kind of, and I see it every single day where it's like you got to. I would say the first step is you got to be willing to take a step, however big or however small. You have to be willing to take a step. That's why I've always been a huge advocate against. Me personally, I don't like medications being prescribed, and
I agree.
And I'm not going to go into the whole.
Yeah. To an extent, I agree. Absolutely.
I mean, you need it for a certain percentage of stuff, absolutely, and there is a time/place for that, But I think too often, and we know people like this, we all do, that they think, all right, this is going to be the magic pill that's going to save me. No, it's not. It's going to help temporarily. And quite honestly, this is a much better pill to start getting yourself addicted to, where you're willing to take that first step where the side effects are minimal, as opposed to, relying on something else. And that is one of the things I love about what you've talked about and your story. And especially, I say this all the time. When I first got into the position I'm in, they asked me, tell us a little about something of yourself. And for me, I've always believed in this. Find a mentor, be a mentor. That's just some of my personal, advice in there, is because you may think you know everything, but there's always somebody out there that knows something better, smarter, quicker, whatever it is than you. But it's also important for you to share that knowledge. And that's what you've done over here. If you take your mentor that you talked about, use that information, and you've now shared it with others to be a mentor for guidance. And if it's just that one step, that's huge.
Well, you know what a mentor is? A mentor is air support. You would never be on the ground on a mission like we were in Afghanistan. And if you're fighting a hell of a battle with an enemy that appears to be winning or is strong, and you have air support on call flying around, you wouldn't say, we're not going to call in air support because we don't want command and higher up to think we can't handle ourselves on the battlefield. That would be stupid. You would get yourself and your men killed.
Great analogy.
And if you made it back, you would be relieved of your command probably immediately.
Before you got back.
But what kind of stupid is it to go, we don't want people to think we can't handle it, and so we're not going to call in air support when they're right there ready. Here's the thing about air support. The pilot in the A-10, God bless it, it's a beautiful thing. It's the best thing I ever saw.
AC-130s are pretty nice too.
So the pilot flying around, though, he can see your battlefield from a perspective you cannot.
Exactly.
And he doesn't have to know what it's like to be a grunt on the ground. That's what I was. But he can see things on the battlefield that we couldn't see.
Right.
He can see over that ridge and go, buddy, don't go that way. There's 200 of them over there. Go this way.
Yeah.
Now, if we didn't, you don't know what it's like to be here. We're not listening to you. You could just walk straight into a hornet's nest.
You have you've brought up.
And people do that in life.
And exactly where I wanted to go, but I wanted to come back to what you were talking about with steps. And Andrew pulled your ring up. I don't have mine on because it literally, I've dropped a little bit of weight, not enough, but it now falls off. So Andrew's ring is a 22 kill ring, and I wanted to talk for just a second about, because you were talking about one step, and I'm going to do a one-step story about Dylan Hines. And I don't know if you know who Dylan Hines is. Dylan Hines is the only person to have stepped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh,
and
yes.
not in live. There's about 20 of those still running around. He's actually interviewed all of them, but he's the only one who can walk. And one thing he said, and a shout out to my friend Mighty Melanie Royer. She works with the Denton Mental Retardation Board. She took me to see him speak. And this was up there, and I tell the same story about Travis Mills, the Army veteran who lost both arms and both legs. I did not want to go hear this talk. But, it was Mighty Mel, and, her husband, Dr. Royer, was going, and it was like, okay, we got to go. And in both cases, that and hearing Travis Mills, I really didn't want to go going in. I came out very uplifting. But the thing that he said, to go back to what you said and to tie this back to the book. So Andrew's ring is a 22 kill ring. It honors our veterans, but it's to try to bring awareness to the 22 veterans a day who commit suicide. And I believe that number is down to 20. We're doing better with it, but it's still 20 too many who take their own lives. But the very interesting thing that Dylan Hines talked about, and he said everybody that he interviewed had the same thought. The split second gravity took over from that last step. Oh, crapola, what have I just done? And you talked about that one step. Now, you're talking about a positive step, but the step can be a negative one. And one of the things that I want to highlight with the book is a lot of times you get to the point where life becomes overwhelming, where you don't know how you're going to make that next step. And sometimes the only thing you need is the knowledge of how. How do I do this? What specifically can I do right now? And that's and I kind of wanted to come back to that in the book. So, for example, you talked about the gentleman that was in Nazi captivity. What was his mental process? I can't imagine.
I'll tell you exactly what it was.
Yeah, I love to.
Yeah.
One thing Viktor Frankl is known for was what his ideas. He was a psychologist as well, a very brilliant, educated guy, and he had this theory. I don't know if you call it a theory, but it was his own ideas called logotherapy. It was basically logotherapy has to do with basing your life on a sense of meaning as a means to overcome. And he said this about suffering. When people ask me what was the one thing that helped me move forward, and I didn't know how to explain it, he said in one sentence what I couldn't say in 1,000 words, and it was this: when it came to suffering, he said, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. I'll say that again. He said, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. And what he means by that is it transforms into something else when your suffering is for a cause you believe in. I would even say, or you believe it happened for a reason, even if you don't know that reason, you have that faith in that. And that was actually my case after the suicide bombing, because I didn't know what could come from it, but I believe there was always an opportunity that something would. I was open to that.
To go back to something else that I'd mentioned, because I really admire. We've been married 19 years. We came into this we were older. We both came into this with a little bit of baggage, not uncommon in this day and age. Nope. And we've worked really hard, but we're always fascinated to hear how other couples, to learn from other couples. Yeah, I'm going to get a little personal on you. There had to have been some struggles in those 14 months. There had to have been some times that each of you questioned, what the hell are we doing? Can you talk about that for just a minute? And what got you guys through that?
Well, I'll be 1,000%. Well, you can't be 1,000%. Let's be real here. I'll be 100% honest with you. At no time did we ever actually question our marriage. And that's probably not something you hear. The problems that arose were more like the effects of me. Well, let's say I'm sleeping in bed. She reaches over top of me to grab something off the nightstand, and my eyes open, and there's somebody hanging over me, and I go to, I don't know what's going on,
right?
Right. And so there's that kind of stuff where it wasn't like, oh, we're not going to make it. Our marriage is just going to hell in a handbasket. We never actually had those issues, but there were these other things that mainly were coming from me just trying to readapt to normal life again. And of course, her response to it and trying to get her to understand, because, I was different. She was different. She had her own battles to fight with me being gone, not knowing if I was coming home, and then not knowing if I was going to live after hearing I got injured, and she was told the wrong injury, which is another story. But she had to adapt to me. So we actually have never questioned our marriage. And that's probably not most people. I never hear stories like that, but that's the honest truth with ours. But we do have we do have issues over the years. There are things, obviously, no couple's perfect, but but it's never really occurred to us to just throw in the towel, like literally, like we're done. Like we've never actually gotten anywhere near that point, and maybe that's unique. It's just our story.
Well, got a question for you, and and I think it's kind of good. You mentioned, you had your own challenges, and throughout the process, healing, whether it was physical or mental, because you had both, as you mentioned, physical wounds and mental wounds. What would you say, and again, it's different for everybody, as you mentioned, what did you find more challenging? Was it the physical, the mental, or a combination thereof?
I would rather lose a leg than lose my mind. And I know guys who are missing both legs who have a far stronger and better mind than some of the most able-bodied people I've ever met. And nowadays with prosthetics, you can get a new leg, you can get a swimming, scuba diving leg, a running leg, a skydiving leg. You can replace those things. And I have friends who have all kinds of these different prosthetics, and they're more able-bodied than most able-bodied people that we know, and you know these people. Yep. But, man, if this is your operating system up here, if this thing is off up here, it's the driving thing. It's the machine it's the steering wheel. It doesn't matter how good the car is, if the steering wheel's jacked in the 10 o'clock position and there's a cliff over there, it doesn't matter how powerful the engine is. It's just going to run off the cliff even faster.
Right.
And so I would definitely, I would give up a limb before losing part of my mind, because it's just, here's the thing, you're so close to your own battle that you don't see sometimes. I call it the fog of war in the book. And it's basically, if you've heard someone ever say you can't see the picture because you're inside the frame, you're literally so close to it, you have limited perception. Again, that's why air support is so important. Having a mentor or allowing other people to look in and go, hey, what about this? What about that? And here's the thing, we disqualify people. Oh, like I said,
I love how you just said that.
Yeah, we disqualify them to our own detriment. They don't know what it's like to be in my position, or they haven't been through what I've been through. Here's the thing, because they've not been affected by the same traumatic experience as you, they're not inhibited in their ability to see things in your life because they have not been through it. That actually qualifies them to see it from a different angle. And when you see things from different perceptions and angles, you start seeing different pathways out of the kill zone.
Now, one thing I want to mention, and I want to make sure our listeners hear this point, because we have been talking about people who've been obviously in combat, who have been in extreme situations, who have dealt with being blown up and burned. And for those that don't know it, the BAMC, the Brooke Army Medical Center, is the finest burn center in the world.
Hands down.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's down in my hometown. I'm from San Antonio. I've mentioned that before. We're very proud of it. My father died at Fort Sam Houston. My brother was born at Fort Sam Houston. We have strong ties. The hospital at Fort Sam Houston, which is part of the overall medical center. But what I wanted to say that I hope people are taking from this, and we are talking about the extremes, but this is how everybody has their own battles and their own challenges. And to reiterate what Brian is trying to reach is, these are instructions where you can take, you almost hate the, oh, well, so-and-so had it worse. Yeah, there's always somebody who has it worse, but how does that fix my problems? And it's take from these people who have had serious problems, but they have words of wisdom for you. And in a 35-minute read, you are going to walk away with that, with 5 to 10 good ideas that can impact your life immediately. And I tell you what, that's a pretty damn good return on investment of time.
No question about it. That is, the big thing, and we've all heard it said before, is we need to find your why. That is really, really important. And this book really helps you find that why. And I'm going to steal a line from a mutual good friend of ours who has said it in many of his speeches. For veterans, now granted, this is just talking to veterans, but it really relates to everyone, is you got to become a recalibrated carnivore.
Yeah.
And
Okay, who said that?
Jake Schick.
Who?
Jake Schick.
Oh, Jake.
That's our boy, Jake Schick.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Simplified Jake, if you're listening.
Yeah.
We call him Hollywood now because he spends so much time on camera.
You got to become a recalibrated carnivore. When you get out there, and again, that's a term that the veteran military community uses, but if you think about that really applies to everybody in life and what you're doing. And your book really applies to everybody in life. There's so many things, every time I hear you talk, and you and I, we've been many places together and know a lot of the same running folks. We've used golf as our tool, to prove. But the bottom line is, you got to find that mentor. You got to find your why again. And I think your book at least gives you the blueprint of how to maybe go find that.
Yeah, and when you talk about the why, do you know what Viktor Frankl's why was?
What was his why?
When he was in Auschwitz, his why, it was a vision of the future that he had, that he wanted, and he kept clinging to. A lot of people in the camps, they would want to see their family again.
Right.
They would look forward to the day when they felt like giving up. They thought, this will end and I'll see them again. His vision was this. And this is while he's in Auschwitz. His family's already dead. Everybody. He's in the worst condition you can humanly not even begin to imagine. And his vision was this. His vision was, when I get out of here, I want to travel around to different universities and talk about the psychology of concentration camps.
Wow.
That was the vision he had for his future while in Auschwitz, people dying every day next to him. And he had a 1 in 28 chance of getting out of there alive. 1 in 28. Wow. Not good odds.
No.
And that's with everything else. That was his vision. Do you know what he did when the Americans freed them and he got out? For the rest of his life, he wrote one of the best books I've ever read called Man's Search for Meaning. You can read it in an afternoon. It's about 150 pages. But it'll take you a lifetime to really grasp. But it is so, I mean, it's like next to the Bible, it's literally like the best book ever written.
Wow.
And everybody, if you haven't read it, you are a lesser human because of it. But he went around, here was what he did. He got out, he traveled around to universities and talked about the psychology of concentration camps and what he learned through there as a doctor. And it's amazing he was able to separate himself as much as he did from the personal experience to actually be observational to the point where he could talk about it objectively. And I think that was a big part of his healing is that he was able to. But he had a vision for the future, even in the moment when it looked like there was no future, obviously. But that was what kept him strung along. Instead of trying to push and power through, you're going to get tired. This allowed him to be pulled through his experience by a vision of the future that he wanted, that he desired, that he believed in. So that was his vision. He got out. He did exactly that.
Brian, one of the things that always happens when you come on, we always wind up running short of time. Before we say goodbye to you for this show, one more time, give our audience, give our listeners, we will post it online as well, a way to reach out to you at blownupguy.com, but also the way they can download a copy of the book.
If you want a print copy, go to resiliencebooklet.com. If you'd like the free version, the PDF is an instant download. Just go to free R booklet, booklet.com, and you can literally just put in your email address, click the button, and it arrives in your email in about 2 seconds, and you can read it today, and use that to help yourself, help other people. There's no reason to struggle. I don't know who said it, but it's true. And in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And if you're dealing with things and you're not educating yourself and working through, it's your own damn fault.
Yeah,
it just
absolutely.
Is. It just is.
I cannot thank you enough. I can't thank you for the years of friendship. It has been great. We're going to have Brian back on later in the year. But we want to take a minute. So as we are dropping knowledge bombs, and if you've noticed, we try to make the knowledge bombs historic to the week that we're in. And I am very honored this past week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, I was appointed to the newly created DFW USO board. Interesting timing is that our USO is celebrating its 80th year. So we want to close out the show talking a little bit about the USO. The USO is one of the great organizations that actually serves our troops incredibly well, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. There we go. Happy 80th birthday, USO. They are most known, most often seen in airports. They are there to help our people that are traveling. We are soon going to have we have a USO at the International Terminal. Sorry, the word slipped right out of my mind. The USO Terminal at DFW, but we're about to have a USO Center at Love Field in Dallas as well. Here is one of the literally very first, and it's Hana Pepe. It's pronounced Pepe, I believe. My 3 years in Hawaii, and I barely speak Hawaiian. This is one of the absolute very first USO clubs that was created in 1941. Needless to say, that is in Hawaii. And the other thing, the USO might be best known to the rest of the world for the USO shows that used to go during wartime and entertain our troops, and still do.
They still do. And once you're done with that, I'll share one of mine. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures. Actually, I probably shouldn't have any pictures.
And Mr. USO was Bob Hope.
Yes,
and that's Raquel Welch. And not much else needs to be said. At 70 years old, she was still amazing. Absolute, yeah.
I will say when I was deployed on a couple occasions, we had the USO come visit us. one of the big things was USO tour came out, visit us. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders travel quite extensively with the USO. But I will say this much, and I know I'll probably get some heat from this. One of the coolest teams to come out and visit us, well, two cool teams. One, the Arizona Cardinal came out to visit us when I was over in the Sinai Peninsula. Super cool folks out there. They were outstanding. But the Minnesota Vikings also came out to visit us when we were over in Iraq. Awesome group of folks out there. So got to give two big shout-outs to those organizations.
Well, let's do one more shout-out.
All right.
So one year they had a bunch of college coaches go around. And Mac Brown, who was the coach at the University of Texas, one of my favorite coaches of all time. I've actually gotten to meet him, gotten his autograph.
Do you have his book?
Believe it or not, I did not get an autograph in his book.
Coach Brown, if you're listening,
you got to hook me up, man.
The second Library of Congress that is out there is missing one of your books. So if you can somehow...
We have the book. We just don't have it autographed.
Oh.
But he autographed a football for me, and that was pretty cool.
All right.
But the story I wanted to tell is about another friend of ours. So he is talking to a young Green Beret, Special Forces guy named Nate Boyer. And he said, hey, and Nate Boyer was actually a reservist, and he goes, when you get back, you come see me. And Nate had never played football. We'll find you a spot on the team. Nate was the deep snapper for 3 years for the University of Texas. He lettered, and he wound up trying out with Mac and Pete Carroll are good friends.
In Seattle.
Seattle gave him a tryout, and he spent a little time. He didn't make the team, but he spent a little time. Nate continues the mission. Charlie Mike serving our veterans. Oh, there we go. That is Miss Ann Margaret. So we are putting a couple of the iconic women in the world who went out on USO tours to entertain the troops. And I'm going to repeat, we don't have the audio for it, but one of Bob Hope's talk about being upstaged. And I believe it was one of these two ladies, Raquel Welch. I think it was Raquel Welch. Anyway, brings a soldier up on stage. And Bob goes, don't you want to shake her hand? He goes, no, sir, I'm shaking already.
Well, got a question for you. A little bit knowledge about
There's Miss Margaret, and that black man with the glasses, that is Rosie Greer of the famous Fearsome Foursome. Nobody in the studio knew who that was when we first put the picture up. Shame. Y'all are too young.
Do you know who replaced Bob Hope once he stopped doing the USO tours?
I know that I saw... Ooh, who's that?
Oh, Brooke Shields.
Oh, that's right.
Come
That's
on
Brooke
now.
Shields. She doesn't compare to the other two. Sorry.
Well, the guy who replaced him, and I believe is still extremely active, Wayne Newton.
Really? I did not know
Wayne
that.
Newton took over for when obviously you can never replace Bob Hope. I mean, that's, there's Bob Hope and then there's
everybody else.
Yeah. But, Wayne Newton.
Robin Williams
took
right
over.
there?
Yeah, he did a lot of tours over there. In fact, there was a great USO video of him in Afghanistan when Revelry was called. All the troops stopped,
That was
and turned
amazing.
around. And he recognized that that was a great moment.
It was funny. It was he was standing. All of a sudden, Reveille starts, and then all of a
all
sudden,
the troops
everybody
turned their
turns
back to
around,
him.
turned his back to him, and he's like, and he had just gotten on stage, and he was like, "Ooh, that's weird."
Like,
I didn't know it was that
like,
bad.
What do you all know that I don't know? But Robin Williams, what a great.
Oh, my gosh.
Definitely one of a kind. But yeah, those are some of the folks. And the USO, they do incredible work. I've traveled through many of them. Some of my favorite USO plays. Obviously, DFW's got an amazing USO stop for veterans and their families.
Facility?
Yes.
Is that the word you're looking
That's
for?
what, thank you.
Well, and here's the bad news.
What's
the
that?
bad news is that there was a water leak that destroyed the old facility, so they have just recently
Terminal
finished the new facility. But yeah, we absolutely love the USO. I am honored to be on their board. It always has had a very special connotation for me. And it's kind of how I will try to continue to serve. I also love the fact that they do a ton right now, every day. So they will go down to Fort Hood, and they will do a huge barbecue, hot dogs, and burgers for all the troops and all the families. And I'm getting the signal.
We are getting ready to close out the show.
Unfortunately, this show went, as always, way too fast. Charles, are we
No.
done? No, he's counting us
It's been
down.
done. Well, for Chuck and I, we want to say thank you. Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
See you all next week. Hoorah
Thank you, my friend.
and oorah.